Hi, I'm gonna tell you a horror story, but I'm gonna make it funny. I've been told that a lot of people avoid listening to horror stories because sometimes it gets too intense, hence the decision to make it funny. I'm hoping that it would diffuse the tension a little bit and make horror stories palatable to everyone, not just horror enthusiasts. Alright, enough with the intro. Hit the subscribe button, sit down, I'm gonna tell you a story. This one's called Airbnb Grandma. Airbnb Grandma. No, that still sounded wrong. Airbnb Grandma. Let's begin. Before I begin, full disclosure, these are not stories that I came up with or wrote. I am just narrating you stories from Reddit. And if you don't know it yet, Reddit is a gold mine of horror stories. Alright, let's begin. Airbnb Grandma. The story of Airbnb Grandma is brought to us by a gentleman who was on his way to attend a wedding in a Texan town. I don't know the name of the town. And he had booked an Airbnb for the weekend so that he could stay there and attend the wedding. And as soon as he got there, he was like, wow, the place is fabulous. Like, it looked clean, no weird stains, no locked basements, no locked anything, no urns with ashes. It looked like a really clean place, and he was really excited about staying there. But what stood out to both of them was the decor. All the amenities, all the appliances, they were modern, but the decor was straight out of like 1950s, 1970-ish. Like, it looked like the place had been built to live in that era, and somehow just the appliances had been updated for modern convenience. As they started exploring the Airbnb, both of them said out loud, yeah, an elderly grandma probably lived here and died here, because the house was giving grandma vibes. The one thing that gave maximum grandma energy was that every furniture surface had a stack of coasters. Dining table, big stack of coasters. Coffee table, big stack of coasters. Bedside table, you guessed it, more coasters. At this point, they wouldn't be surprised if the coaster itself was on top of another coaster. In other words, the message that the house was giving them was loud and clear. Protect the furniture or you face the consequences. And as they eased into the house and started settling in, they had to have a few snacks and refreshments, and each time they would consume a drink, they would announce loudly to the house, look grandma, I'm using a coaster, and then they would place their drink on it. Nothing unusual was happening at all. It was sort of like an inside joke to announce to the house each time they used a coaster. Their very first night in that property was absolutely normal. No weird sounds. In fact, they were actually saying that they might find a Victorian child peeking at them from the hallway, but nothing of that sort happened. No mysterious noises, no weird banging noises, no odd smells. It was perfectly smooth. The very next day, they go ahead and attend the wedding, and they get back really late, and they were like tired AF. Now, this is an important detail, okay? This gentleman and his wife always opt to sleep in different rooms when they are traveling. Apparently, the gentleman snores like a truck fighting for its life. I don't know, his words, not mine. Just as he was about to head to the guest bedroom after leaving his wife in the main bedroom, he made his way to the kitchen, fetched a glass of water, walked to the spare bedroom, put it on the nightstand, and then went to sleep. And like he mentioned, he snored like a truck and slept like a log. A few hours into his deep sleep, he was awoken by this really loud crash. Okay, it was not like not a tiny crash, like a giant, earth-shattering crash. He wakes up, he sits upright, and then he looks around and then sees the glass that he kept on his nightstand just fly up and fall into the middle of the room. At this point, he's like not sure if he's dreaming, because this is really weird, because the crash wasn't caused by that glass of water anyway. It flew up after he woke up. Not slid, not tipped, flew. F-L-E-W. English is not my native language, so excuse my bad spellings and pronunciation. It just flew off the nightstand and fell to the floor. And then he was like, okay, maybe the grandma spirit that we were joking about is actually observing us and is pissed that we did not use a coaster for the glass. So he gets up and he's immediately like, sorry grandma, I'm so sorry that I kept the glass on your nightstand without using a coaster. And then he turns around to pick up the glass from the point where it fell down. But as he goes there, he realizes that there's no glass there. And he's like, "What? I just saw it fall." Turns around, nowhere. And then he sits on the floor and then looks under his bed to find that the glass is there in the middle of, like, under the bed. It's not fallen down, it's not shattered, it's standing upright, like someone had intentionally placed it under the bed. It was at that point that he realized painfully that he was being disciplined by a grandma for not using a coaster. It was very late into the night. He loudly apologized profusely a few more times, and then he couldn't do anything about the glass because he'll need to, like, use a broom or something with a long handle to poke it out. So he was like, "Let it be there for the night. I'm gonna go to sleep." So he climbs back into bed and he goes back to sleep again. A few hours go by, and then he's awoken once again by a loud shriek. Not a yell, not shouting, shrieking, the angry kind. Once again, he jumps out of bed, and right then, another crash. A really loud one. And he's sure that at this point, his wife in the other room must have heard all this. His very first thought was that someone had broken into the house because, the crash was unusual. So he goes around the house, checks the kitchen, checks the front locks, everything's intact, no one has broken in, and then he goes to his wife's room, and then there's nothing unusual there as well. But his wife is awake, so he goes in and he's like, "Did you hear something?" And then her face goes pale, and she says, "I heard a lady shriek." And then it turns out that the lady, the wife, had left something on the dining table, a bottle of water without a coaster underneath it. They really pondered about this entire situation for some time, and then they realized that there wasn't much they could do about it, and they were supposed to leave in a few days. But ultimately, they just accepted that they were being punished for violating a rather strict coaster policy. So they left the property the very next day and left a 5-star review. Beautiful home, great location, ghost mildly aggressive, but committed to furniture preservation. That's it. Story ends here. My theory is that if there is a grandma haunting that property, she's doing an excellent job of preserving the furniture. But I also think that this is something else. I don't know what it is, but it's something else. I'm trying not to believe in the paranormal because that would just mean I would have to believe in a lot of questionable things, and I don't want to do that. Alright, so yeah, that's it for today. I'm going to come back with another story, short story, so that I don't take up too much of your time. Okay, bye. Adab, namaste. Do consider subscribing. I'll be telling you a lot of spooky stories.